Heidi ho, neighbors. It's Bill Whittle here at the Stratosphere Lounge, and episode 40, and I think the volume's a little bit high. I'll bring it down a little bit. How's everybody doing out there? We are in, well, if I look tired, it's because I'm tired. We've been doing an awful lot, getting ready for the new website launch, and been busy as can be. All kinds of things working on all kinds of levels. But this is episode 40, and after all the talk about promotion and cheating and teasing and stuff, we thought we'd go ahead and do a regular open mic night. Regular questions, no limitations, no nothing. Just going to put them out there and set them up and knock them back down. I hope you guys have been doing as well as I've been. I'm just so excited about everything that's going on here. Like I said, we'll be taking a lot of different questions tonight, so not so much about the new website, other than to say that as we get more and more elements back here coming in, from professionals, which we've had the means to actually hire professionals, and as we get more and more of the stuff back, I'm just so impressed with, with everything. I think we had the new, played the Petula under a logo that I did some work on, Stratosphere Lounge logo. Was a little busy, and it looks okay up close. It's got some neat elements in it with the static background, but I think this will probably be the one that we're going to use. This is going to be the one that's going to be on the website anyway, and I just think that's just class. I really love it. That's a result of my friend Buster O'Connor, who's a graphic designer I've known since '92, I guess. Good friend of mine down from Florida back at UF, and Buster's just killer. And I think that's just really elegant and nice, and merchandise for Stratosphere Lounge will look an awful lot like this, kind of with these colors, I think. So I'm real happy with that. I think that really is a nice compromise between being clear and being cool, and it's got elements I like in it. So that's exciting. And everything else is coming along. We're getting new renders from Aurora. We've got Big Bat Problems, the monster, the aliens, I suppose I should say, because they're not monsters. I made a major point to make sure they weren't monsters, that they were real creatures. Those drawings are coming along so well that I can't reveal all of them. I'm actually concerned that if I put that up as the banner on the website for that page, it's going to give the whole show away. But they're terrific. And the light videos are coming in and everything else looking really good. So I will have more for that for you. Next week's going to be the big countdown tease, I think, starting on Monday. And then that'll do it. So, anyway, with that said, let's just go ahead and get on the questions, because we got a lot of them tonight, and they're pretty serious ones, and I usually think I can just knock through these, but I always end up taking a lot more time than I think I'm going to take, which is the story of my life. I ended up getting about 20 minutes behind schedule back in 1988, I think it was, and I haven't been able to catch up. I've been 20 minutes late for everything really since then. So I think that's it's probably the ADD. I've never considered myself to have ADD, but I've had some tests done, and people say I think that I might be. I always try to do too much at once, and I always try to. I just try to do too much at once, and that always results in me underestimating how long things will take, including how long it take for me to sit down and get ready at the chair for this show every week. So, anyway, let's get rolling. Joe Labby says, "Hey, Bill. Hey, Joe. With all the violent rhetoric flying around Washington these days, Republicans have a gun to my head. If you oppose Obamacare, you're guilty of murder, hostage takers, bomb-throwing teabagger terrorists. Is it possible that the violent rhetoric has a tipping point?" And, of course, the answer is it's not only possible, it's likely. I am really concerned about this. Mostly concerned about how one-way it is, right? Sarah Palin has a map of congressional districts that she's targeting by putting little crosshairs over it, or I don't even think they were like hunting crosshairs, really just more of a target thing. And people are screaming, and the Democrats are yelling, and oh my God, they're calling for the death of these candidates, and it's all this is coming from the left, and it's all this hysteria is coming from the left. I was in the airport in Wisconsin. I think it was at Appleton, might have been at Minneapolis. But I can't bear to listen to CNN, especially when the president's on. He's on all the time, and I was sitting behind the TV, so I didn't have to look at it. And I heard some Democratic congressman saying, you hate Obamacare because you hate Obama. You can't stand the fact that it's a black president. That's why you racist teabaggers are against it. And I'll just tell you what I would have said to him if I was in his place, as an answer to your question for you, Joe. If I'd heard that man say that to my face, that Democratic representative, I guess he was part of the Democratic Black Caucus, because he had that air of, if you disagree with me, you're a racist. I would have said to him, basically, so you're not a man, right? You're not a man. And Barack Obama's not a man. None of you are men. None of you are people. None of you are real people, because we're treating you like real people. We're disagreeing with you on policy about things that we don't like that you propose. So if the definition of a racist is somebody who disagrees with a black man, then what you're basically saying is you're not man enough to have your own opinion. You're not man enough to face the criticism for having your own opinion. And you're certainly not man enough to defend your own position. So what you're basically doing is, you're basically saying that we will be right by definition, and anybody who disagrees with us is a racist. We're basically saying that we're just an undifferentiated blob of perfection, and that there's no way to criticize us as individual people, as individual men. You're a coward, is what you are. You're a coward and you're incompetent, and you know you can't win this argument on the basis of the facts. You know for an absolute fact that this thing is a giant train wreck, not just Obamacare, the whole damn thing. The whole damn thing is a catastrophe. The whole administration's a catastrophe, and you know it. And you know it. So, what can you do? What are you going to do? You're going to basically hide behind this forever? Do you expect the rest of the country to treat you and the rest of people who take this position as these little untouchable little 4-year-old children who you can't possibly criticize because you're going to start screaming and yelling and crying about how unfair it is? Grow the hell up, man. President Obama is an individual politician, and so are you. Criticizing the policies got nothing to do with his skin color. Why are you being such a crybaby? Why don't you be a man and accept the consequences for your actions? You've taken a political position. You're getting criticism for it. Respond like a man and not like a child. Can you do that, do you think? Is that beyond your ability? And it's true for all of these guys with these ad hominem attacks. I'm not even going to mention ad hominem attacks to people who don't know what ad or hominem means. It's pointless. It's a waste of my time. I'm just going to call them what they are. They're cowards and they're children. Man up. Be an adult. Face the consequences of your political actions and defend them as a man. Or don't. You chicken shit crybaby. One or the other. I'm over it. And no one has the guts to stand up and say it. Has the guts to just come up and say these things, just to stand up and say them. Because of the whole race thing, because we've been indoctrinated for 40 years now of this horrible crime that we've committed against people's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers. So therefore, everything that they say has to be given to them on a silver platter, or else you're guilty of this horrific crime. I'm not guilty of that horrific crime. I didn't do it. I never had a slave in my life. And even if my father had held slaves, and even if I benefited and was a millionaire because of what my father did, it wouldn't reflect on me, because I'm not other people. And I think, I don't know, I'm so over it. I'm so over the whole thing that I'm just ready to just, hurl it back at them. They really don't know what else to do. And so I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of the win. I'm not going to look at my shoes and shuffle away and say, ooh, no. You want to call me a racist because I disagree with this god-awful, ruinous policy that is falling apart and on fire? It's like watching the Hindenburg come around. It's like being the guy on the ground running out of the Hindenburg. There's nothing but flaming wreckage and steel coming down on the ground. And what do we do about it? Nothing. We don't do anything. So, I'm just over it. And when these racists like Touré or whatever his name is on NBC start hustling this line, I'm basically going to call them out too. I'm just going to basically say to them, don't you have anything newer than this? Really? Honestly, is this the best thing you've got? Really? After 50 years or 60 years of white Americans bending over backwards to show you that they're not responsible for the crimes that their great-great-great-great-grandfathers committed, they're not responsible for the crimes their fathers committed. If they didn't do it, they didn't do it. To make up for people whose also great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers were held in slavery at a time when slavery was just the norm all around the world? Honestly, no, I'm done. I deal with people as individuals and as men and individual men and women, and that's why the black conservatives that I'm friends with, and I'm friends with them because I like them individually. I've met a few of them that I don't like individually. I'm not friends with those, but the ones who I do like individually, I'm friends with because they're good men and women, and I like them, and I'm proud to be in their company as individuals. That's how it works for us. And by the way, I was working on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout for 5 years. I was the editor on that show. I edited every show except for the last 3 or 4, I think. 180 episodes. Done by two big liberals, Peter Bart and Peter Gruber, who I'm very fond of, by the way. I don't want to be mistaken on that. I liked them both very much. They were very kind to me. But basically, they would occasionally have like a black actor on the show, and to watch them deal with them with the kid gloves, and just as soon as they had a black guest on the show, everything turned into everything's just so kid gloves, and everything is so this and so. I have such deep respect for you, and I'm so, it's the same kind of, that is the same kind of racism as assuming somebody is better or special or delicate because they're black is the same as assuming that they're ignorant or stupid or violent because they're black. It's racism. Stop it. We know who the racists are out there. The people who have made a plantation out of black people in this country. Those are the racists. That's the Democratic Party. They kept slaves on the plantation in the 1800s. And then after the Republicans liberated them, then by the time we got into the 1900s, they figured out a way to get them back on the plantation again. And that's what it is. The Democratic Party has black people on a vote plantation. They have to work one day every 2 years. That's the deal. And until we're ready to call that the deal, we're going to lose. So moving on. Remy Ballou, I would guess. Does it seem like Obama and his ilk are trying to provoke a violent response with the intolerable petulance of the last few days? I'm following this question up, obviously, on the last one. Here's a follow-up to the follow-up. Do you think they're watching us not react violently and saying, what does it take to get a rise out of this people? I categorically think that's true. That's a really profound observation, Remy. They must be thinking, what do we have to do to get an actual Tea Party guy to shoot up the place? We've called them racists. We called them murderers. We called them terrorists. We've called them bomb throwers. We've called them all this stuff. We've driven them to the limits of their tolerance. What does it take to get what we've been looking for this whole time, namely a Tea Party conservative to shoot up a place so that we can basically take the rest of people's rights away? What is it going to take? May take more than you've got, President Narcissist. May take more than you've got in the bag. I really should just, I just saw a comment in the screen section here about tweeting more, and the fact of the matter is, I had lost my access to my Twitter account, and for a year and a half, I was trying to get it back from Twitter, and Twitter would say, "Here's your password reset," and they'd mail me the email, and I'd never get the email. We went back and forth for a year. But I got it solved. So I'm going to go ahead and tweet something, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to tweet. But I want to tweet it because I think it's profound, and I'm going to get it out there in the world. So here it is. Going out live on the Stratosphere Lounge. Let me just write it, and then I'll tell you what it says. I'm sorry for the delay. Suspense is what this is. Sorry about this. I know this is bad radio, but I need to get this on the world. I just want this on the record, and besides, I need to be doing more tweeting anyway. Here it comes, everybody watching on Twitter, listening on Twitter. I'm going to get a lot of responses to this. Bam. Okay. Presumably that went out. And it said, conservatives have principles. Liberals have agendas. Once you understand this, everything makes sense. It's really true. When Bush was spending more money than he should have, when he was running these deficits, conservatives attacked him for it. And conservatives attacked him over the Patriot Act. Those conservatives that thought it was incorrect, they certainly attacked him over Harriet Miers. They did all this other stuff. We have principles. And we have principles. That means that our principles survive a candidate. They survive policy. Our principles are our guiding light. Our principles don't change. We've given our principles a great deal of thought. And not only have we given conservative principles a great deal of thought, we have also allowed 2 centuries or 3 centuries of very smart people to give them a great deal of thought. That's why we're conservatives. We think there's fundamental truths, and these truths are so obvious that they're preserved across generations and there is no change. So, there you go. Somebody just pointed out there's no link on the Facebook page. I was in such a rush today that I did that. Excuse me again. I know this is just a miserable, terrible thing to do to an audience, but I need to go ahead and put that up. So let me just go ahead and get that over on the Facebook page because some people don't know where we are. And life is strange. You know, I'm going to get a producer for the show one day, and then we'll show you. Anyway, you know, all this stuff is really kind of reaching a fever pitch, isn't it? Don't you think there's just been enough of it? Don't you get the sense that that it's just more than any people should be expected to handle? So here's the link. Now, for those of you kind folks who may have been looking at Facebook and not know how to get there, now we can bring them into the happy family. Anyway, this is the point. I think if you understand this point, you really get it, right? Liberals have agendas and conservatives have principles, and that's really what it comes down to. Oh, for God's sake! I can't even listen to my own show without these damn commercials. We're going to find a better way to do this, by the way. It's a Spanish ad. So, look, I don't know how to put it any plainer than this, but what we believe are a series of principles. They're core values, and they mean a lot to us, and they survive candidates, and when our candidates transgress those examples, we hold them accountable to it. That's why going back to Trent Lott, right? Trent Lott makes some off-color remarks, and he's thrown out of the leadership of the party, and probably appropriately. They're fairly innocent remarks. He basically said happy birthday to a guy who had been what Strom Thurmond was, right? A big old member of the Ku Klux Klan. And I think it was Strom Thurmond, it's hard to tell. Really, that's it. Conservatives have principles. Liberals have agendas. They don't believe in anything other than the will to power, and the power is the power to have their own way. Which leads me to the next question. Or somewhere in here. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead because this is a nice segue. So I'm going to just take a question that I put a little bit lower on the list, and it's from Jim Reinheimer, and it goes directly to this issue. And it's basically, his question is, when is a law not a law, i.e. Obama's changes to Affordable Care Act? Are his actions impeachable or not? If yes, why have no steps been initiated? Lack of Senate majority, fear of being labeled racist, so on and so on and so on. Let's go to this issue of conservatives have principles and liberals have agendas. Barack Obama delayed parts of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. He has no authority to do this. He has no legal authority whatsoever to do this. I was talking with Jeremy Boring about this today. He really put it in very plain terms. He just, we don't even think about it. The president does not have the power to say, oh, and this piece of legislation, which was passed by the House and Senate and that I signed, I've decided arbitrarily to simply alter key elements of it by executive fiat, because I'm the king. And I've decided we're going to put this part of it off a year. He has no words to do it. It's against the law. It's against the law. And it's against the Constitution. They don't care. They don't care. So what do you do about this? Now, if President Obama wanted to delay the implementation of one of these policies of Obamacare, he could ask the House and Senate to pass new legislation, which then he could sign, and that would be law, and that would be legal. But no. And what Jeremy pointed out was that we no longer have a constitution that's treated as law and legal limits. We have a general sort of agreement. These are Jeremy's terms, and he's absolutely right. We have a general sort of agreement where the Senate and the House kind of say, well, we'll sort of keep to this circle, and the president says, well, I'll kind of keep to this cycle. I'll make imperial decisions on a small scale, so long as they're not too big. If they're too big, then I guess the House and the Senate get involved, and the Supreme Court kind of gets involved on some. The Supreme Court is ruling on things and legislating the output of the country's morality in a way that they were never designed to, so they've encroached their barriers, and there's no constitution, there's no separation of powers. There's simply just a general agreement among all of these tyrants, and I include every single person out there with enough exceptions that I could count on one hand, to just say, well, what we really want is power. And so since we all want power, then what we'll do is we'll have an imperial Senate composed of both parties, and we're not going to make any mention of the fact that the president's overreached his boundaries, because if we make a call that the president has overreached his constitutional authority, it may just be a matter of time until people realize that we've overreached our constitutional authority, and that means we won't have the ability to go around and hand people other people's money, which means we won't get the gravy train anymore. The gravy train, of course, is the ability to get this life of luxury and ease, which is something they could never earn in the private sector. My friend, the great senator from the great state of this, here, let's have a jet for you, and let's fly you first class, and let's give you all these benefits, and let's have lobbyists magically supply at your table. Your favorite bottle of scotch just appears, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. It's not law, Jim. It's not law what he changes. He cannot arbitrarily do it. So here's the question, Jim, and this is the question I asked Jeremy when this came up. The question isn't, why is there tyranny and why are people behaving autocratically? That's not the question. The government consists of people like this, and our founders understood that these kind of people would arise. The question is not, why is Barack Obama doing all these things? The question is, why aren't the 200 some plus conservatives, or Republicans anyway, in Washington walking out of the Congress and explaining why they're walking out of the Congress? Why? Because they want the power too. That's why. That's your answer. That's why. So another lovely segue into the next question, which is Tom Keaton's question, which is, would you consider taking the RNC chairmanship if that were ever an option? You discussed setting a good narrative, and that seems to be a place sorely lacking one. Would I consider taking the RNC chairmanship? Yes, I would. You know what else I'd consider taking? Speaker of the House of Representatives. Because I found out, to my shock, absolute shock, that the Speaker of the House apparently doesn't need to be a member of the House of Representatives. As long as the House of Representatives votes for the guy, he is the Speaker. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but it's cool. Look, somebody's going to have to get in this fight for our team, right? Somebody's going to have the guts just to come out and tell these people, call them out and call out their unearned moral superiority, and just say to the American people, it's illegal. It's not a question of whether I like it or not. This could be the Bill Whittle Memorial Fund. Let's place Bill Whittle into orbit around Saturn as a gratitude for his incredible work for the country, and it would still be illegal, and I'd still be opposed to it because I don't have an agenda. I have principles, right? I have principles. It's against, one of the principles that I have is I'm in favor of the rule of law. So somebody, either the RNC chairman or preferably the Speaker of the House, needs to not only do this political maneuvering, they need to make the case. Why? Why? What is the matter with these people? What's wrong with them, with these Republicans? What is wrong with them? Why can John Boehner not just get up every single minute of every single day and say this government shutdown, ladies and gentlemen, is very simple? We have an out-of-control addict with an unlimited credit card, and we have cut the credit card with scissors until he gets his spending under control. It's a credit card that you are paying for. It's in the hands of an irresponsible addict, and we have decided to take a pair of scissors and cut the credit card until he gets some help. And say this again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And say it again and again and again. And don't forget this part. You're paying for the credit card, ladies and gentlemen, not me. I'm not paying for this credit card. I'm not doing this out of meanness. I'm trying to protect you and your money. You are the people that have given these Democrats and many Republicans a bottomless credit card that they spend to the limit, and then they keep asking to raise the limit and raise the limit and raise the limit and raise the limit, and we get deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. You know who has to pay for this? You do. You do. Not me. You. You have to pay for it. We're trying to protect you. We're trying to protect you against our own personal interests, not as Americans, because if we acted as Americans, then we wouldn't be in this trouble, and not even as politicians. But when I say our personal interests, I say when I'm trying to cut up the credit card that the federal government has, it's in my interest as a politician, like the rest of these invertebrates to have an unlimited credit card, because if I have an unlimited credit card, you see, then I can go around and give all these people money, and then those people I give money to will vote for me, and then I get to stay in office, and I get to have all these perks. So in a way, I'm actually acting against my own interests as a politician, and once or twice a century you see this happen, decided to make a decision to act in the interests of the American people as opposed to the interests of Bill Whittle. Bill Whittle doesn't need the money, you see? He doesn't need the money, and he doesn't need the credit, and he doesn't need the love, and he doesn't need the admiration. He gets that somewhere else. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut up the credit card that this out-of-control addict has. He's an addict. He's not irresponsible. He's not extravagant. Irresponsible and extravagant people, when they reach the limit of their credit limit, stop spending until they get their credit card paid down. And we've allowed it, of course. We've enabled it, is the term we're looking for. We are enablers. We're codependent. The American people are codependent on this addict who's spending all this money. And so every time he comes to us crying about how, well, I did buy another golf vacation, I did buy another trip to Spain, I did buy another this, I bought another that, but now I'm out of money. I can't keep the parks open, and children are starving. I need more money. We keep giving it to him. I've decided, no, it's enough. He spent all your money. He spent all your kids' money. He spent all the Chinese money. Now he's spending your grandkids' money. And to me, that's enough. Done. We're going to cut the credit card until this addict gets his behavior under control. Are you calling the President of the United States an addict? Am I calling the President of the United States an addict? Categorically, I'm calling an addict. Of course I'm calling him an addict. What else would you call it? When you can no longer control your behavior in contravention of what is known to be your best interest, meaning the best interest of the country, common sense. Well, now we get to the difference between the best interests of the country and the best interests of the individual. If President Barack Obama is in fact acting according to his constitutional oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, then he is behaving like an addict. He's behaving irresponsibly. He is punishing the future. He's launched a war on the young, and he's making them pay for stuff that we're giving away now so we can get political benefits out of it. We are making young people pay for our extravagance because we want to stay in power. That's an addict. Now, if you, on the other hand, want to look at it as, is this good for Barack Obama personally in contravention of his oath? Well, then he's not an addict. Then he's extremely rational. Then he's a traitor. So those are pretty much your choices, I think, at this point, addict or traitor. I can't see inside the man's soul. I don't know which it is. I kind of think it's addict. But it could be traitor. How dare you? What do you mean, how dare I? Did I make him spend this money? Did I make him do these things? Did I make him go to sleep on those guys in Benghazi? Did I shoot him in the neck with a tranquilizer dart that night? No. No, he did that on his own. And unfortunately for those of you out there who think that because he's black, he's immortal and immune to criticism, I see him as an individual and as a man, or a male anyway. And he made a decision to go to bed that night. That's not a decision I would have made. That's not a decision most people I know would have made. The people I hang out with, my friends, don't go to sleep while we have soldiers fighting for their lives, especially when they can do something about it. So, yeah, addict or a traitor, take your pick. And then here comes the wave of sewage. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Really, country's more important to me. When I think about this, you think about the consequences of what you're saying, and this may cause you your job. It's like, you know what? I don't give a damn about my job. I don't give a damn about my income. I don't care about IRS audits. I don't care about the NSA. Every time I think about the consequences of this kind of plain speaking and the cost to me, conceivably, if you were the Speaker of the House, the cost, gin up enough resentment, it might cost you your life. Okay. I've had a pretty good life. The one thing I keep coming back to when it comes time to think about the costs of standing up to these tyrants is there are any number of 18-year-old kids who sign on the dotted line, men and women both, and they get deployed to places overseas, and they get their one young life shot out of them before they had a chance to do anything to defend the freedoms for this country. And I'm going to worry about my job. I'm 54 years old. I've lived a life where I've never been hungry. I've never been cold. Because of what our veterans and our soldiers have done for us, and I'm going to suddenly just, this could be uncomfortable for me. I might lose money. Maybe I'll get some bad publicity. Maybe somebody will say something nasty about me on Twitter. And this is after how many young men and women have had their lives taken away from them in defense of freedoms, and I don't have the guts to stand up and do this? Please. Please. No, I'm not afraid of these people. Anyway. Last thing I think on this topic is Dean Gallagher. It's all kind of in this general lawlessness that we've evolved ourselves into. Dean Gallagher says, somewhere down the road you talked about at any given time, everyone is in violation of some law. That's right. That's why they keep passing all these regulations. There's scores of regulations. Probably you're in violation of 10 of them at any given time. Things you didn't comply with that you don't even know about. I'm fascinated by this concept, and I grow concerned that this will be used by some against other citizens. I think of this every time someone says you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. I've heard good people say that in defense of the NSA. People like Dennis Prager I admire enormously. And look, Dennis Prager is a moral giant. He's a moral giant. He's just wrong on this. He's wrong. This idea that if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to fear is the lever that it's more of a baseball bat, really, that tyrants swing in the face of innocent people, because innocent people don't have anything to fear, and so they go along with these erosions of the freedoms that are designed to protect them. And so next thing you know, the freedoms are gone. You don't know what happened to them. You don't know where they went. Well, you voted them away when you said, no, I've got nothing to worry about. It's not me. I'm innocent. Those laws are not there to protect the innocent. Those laws are there to protect the guilty. Now, that may sound like an odd thing to say, but what you really have to do is you have to ask yourselves, what kind of protections do we allow people's behavior? Because the further out we allow people to behave without being watched, the freer the country is. A perfectly free world, an ideal world, you'd have a world with very, very few laws and extreme laws, things like murder and rape and theft and fraud and those kind of things. And when people violate those laws, the punishment is harsh. Because if we allow this kind of behavior to go on with them, then we have to start, punishing everything, which is where we are. So, Dean, right now, we're well on our way. We're on a runaway train to a world. I love this expression because it's so horrifying. But what these people really want is they want a world where everything that is not forbidden is mandatory. Just roll that around in your head for a minute. They want a world where everything that is not forbidden is mandatory. So, what else do you say about that? That's what they want. They want a control of the people. They're defective. There's something wrong with them. They have missing genes or chromosomes or something that makes them want to tell other people what to do. And when you look at things like Common Core, they not only want to tell you what to do, but they won't even let you walk away from them telling you what to do. In other words, they'll tell you how to run the school system. And if you decide to take your kids out of school and raise them in your own home, they will say, well, I'm going to put our school system in your own home. You don't get to run away from me. I'm going to tell you what to do whether you like it or not. These people have to be dealt with, and back in a simpler age, we knew how to deal with people who had this kind of busybody gene, but it may come to that again. Am I threatening armed rebellion in the streets? Of course I am. Of course I am. These people need to know there's limits to what we'll take, and they keep pushing the limits, and one day they're going to find out. How dare you make a threat like that? It's my job to make a threat like that. It's my responsibility, not as a political commentator. It's my responsibility as an American citizen. It's my responsibility as an American citizen to inform the government that there are limits to what we will take. And they are already way out of bounds, and that time has passed, and they are now at the point where they're really declaring open war, not on conservatives, on what the country is. I know that means conservatives, but there you go. So, look, I'm the kind of guy who's pretty reasonable. I'm the kind of guy who wants to be left alone. If they wanted to have 15 states secede from the Union, leave those states alone, have them form their own little confederacy or something like that, yeah, I'd probably move to a state like that. I'm not going to tell people in California that they have to live my way. This is the difference between them and me. They will have you live by their rules. I don't have to make anybody live by anybody's rules. I just have to live by my own rules. So if there were free states or something, I'd move there. And I'd move there just so that I could watch the consequences of having half the country just basically, or a third of the country, or 2 states, or 1 state. If 1 state's seceded from the Union, basically 1 state says, we are a conservative state, we're a free state, we're a libertarian state, we're going to basically have no income tax. We're going to have very simple laws. We're going to tax the sales. We're going to have a flat rate tax, maybe a flat rate income tax, something fair, something reasonable. We're going to have the smallest government we can, and everything's going to be allowed except for these very certain small things. If there was a state like that, it could be any state. It could be Kentucky. It could be Idaho, any state. I'd move there. Half the country would move there. That little state would become a superpower with its own nuclear weapons, and wouldn't take long. And then the rest of the country would collapse around it. But then what would happen is all the liberals from the collapsing states would move into that state, which is what's happening in Texas, and then it's like a virus. You have a failing state like California. You have people who are liberals who've made their policies, made California feel the golden state, the land of opportunity. California was the home of every innovation, every invention, guys like Howard Hughes and all of this stuff, all that stuff. And they turned it into a giant welfare state of incompetence and idiocy, and now it's ruined, and now they keep raising taxes, so the people that voted for those higher taxes in the first place are leaving California, and they're going to Texas, and now they're voting for higher taxes in Texas because they're unmistakably stupid. There's something wrong with them genetically. They have like a missing something. I don't really like to talk about this too loud. It's got nothing to do with race or sex or age or anything. It's got to do with progressivism. It's got to do with telling other people what to do. They're diseased. They're like the Walking Dead. Mark my words. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we should be working on a cure. Moving on. Marianne Will. Oh, Marianne. Just Marianne. Maybe I didn't copy your name. Hopefully it's just Marianne. Marianne, I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed your work on Gilligan's Island, and you were my very, very favorite for the longest time until I became a Ginger fan. Marianne wants to know, will Silent America ever be available for Kindle? It will. Not just Silent America, but I'm going to do a Best of Afterburner book, going to do a Best of Firewall book, because a lot of people would rather have the scripts. They'd rather read them. It's hard to hand off on a bus. Here, hold my iPad and look at this. Yes, Silent America will be available on Kindle and Best of Afterburner and Firewall, and they'll be available as books in our new merchandise section, and they will be all sorts of things coming, and we're going to get that store open on opening day, which is a week from Saturday. I think that's the 10th, and then my main problem right now, Marianne, is I'm trying to get everything, and I keep wanting to add things to this opening, and I can't. I got to just get it open, and once I get it open, then I can start to add things on top of that. So yes, it will be available for Kindle. It will be available for iBooks, and we'll do an audiobook version. We'll do all kinds of things like that. So anyway, Cynthia Wilson wants to know: are you going to post your old essays from Eject on the new site? Will there be more of them? We really like the long essays. There will be a link to Eject, which is up in its entirety, at least in the pre-PJTV move days. It goes right up to about actually, strangely enough, goes right up to the election of Barack Obama. The last thing I wrote on Eject before it moved over to PJTV, and I didn't do much with it over there, was to say congratulations to President Obama. I hope I'm wrong about him, and it's a great day for America, and good luck. I've been a little disappointed since then. Moving on. Robert Fraser asks, Pfizer. Robert Pfizer? Perhaps Pfizer, I'm guessing. Hey, Bill, I've asked this before. You've mentioned that one of the foundations of Western civilization is Judeo-Christian monotheism that leads to moral absolutism. However, you've also defended the Founding Fathers as slaveholders because it was considered normal at the time, which is moral relativism. Would you care to square those two statements? Yes, I will. The people who held slaves at the time of the founding were wrong, and because it's normal, that gave them a reason for being wrong, but they're wrong. And I hope you didn't interpret me to say that they were right at the time because other people held slaves. It was simply an explanation for why they held slaves, and it was a definition defending what they would use to defend slavery. Doesn't mean they were right, and it doesn't mean they were two equally just positions. They were wrong, and they gave reasons for being wrong. And the fact that slavery was common at the other all around the world was one of their strongest arguments, and it is one of the strongest arguments looking back on it, why you could be wrong. But they were wrong. And if there was any confusion about that, Robert, then I certainly didn't mean to provide any. Moral truth and absolute truth is absolute truth. And you can be the only person in the world who's right. You can be outnumbered 6 billion to 1, but if you're right, you're right. It doesn't matter what other people think. If I tell you that two objects are going to fall at the same rate, then they're going to fall at the same rate. 12-pound weight and a 1-pound weight drop from an equal height will hit the ground at the same time. That may not make sense. Most people think that the heavy weight falls faster. It's an intuitive thing. It doesn't make sense that they'd hit the ground at the same time, but they do. And if I'm the only person who believes that, I'm right. It doesn't matter if 6 billion people or 20 billion people or 100 billion people say the heavy one falls first. That's 100 billion people who are wrong. Now, when you get into moral issues, it gets a little more difficult than that, but you like to believe anyway that there are absolutes in some levels, and I think slavery is an absolute evil, and it doesn't matter how many people thought it was right, it was wrong. So, like I said, hopefully that didn't cause you any confusion, because I don't see any conflict. I never meant to imply that slavery was okay because it was going on in the rest of the world. I'm quite sure I didn't say that because I never believed that. But anyway, that's that. Speaking of dropping weights from an equal height, that's one of Lyda Loudon's videos that we shot in Venice Beach. Had a blast. Went out to. She's a real pip. That girl. She said basically my generation's been so indoctrinated that you can't even talk about economics or politics. If you hear Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative, they just turn it off because they can't stand the conflict. They are a generation of precious snowflakes. We're going to pay the price for this self-esteem movement quickly. We're paying it already. But she basically said, no, we got to go out there and teach people open-mindedness, which is the first one, and curiosity, which is the second one. So for curiosity, we shot 2 of them. Went out to Venice Beach a couple weeks ago. I think I have some stills here. Yes, I do. There we are out in Venice Beach a couple weeks ago. It's Lyda and me. Lyda on the left. And here's another one with the crew. So we basically went out to Venice Beach, and we got out on the zip line tower there, and we dropped a 2-pound weight and an 8-pound weight, asked people which they thought would hit the ground first, and they told us, and then we dropped them, and most people were shocked, and then, there you go. But when you're right, you're right, and when you're wrong, you're wrong. And that's absolute truth. So anyway, hope that cleared it up for you there, Robert. Moving on. Jeffrey Lee Devlin says, do you think Ted Cruz made the right decision with the filibuster? And then also Jenna Rianne Murphy had the same question. What are your thoughts on Ted Cruz's filibuster? Well, first of all, I've had a chance to meet Ted a couple times at a number of events, and he's just a sweet guy. He's a really smart guy. I think Ted could probably be a little more forceful, could use a little more work on the actual delivery of the message. But with that said, Ted Cruz is fearless, and he's very, very smart. So do I think the decision was right on the filibuster? I categorically do think it was the right thing to do. I remember when Rand Paul did one a while ago. Really what we're talking about is, why would he do it? Remember when the woman did the filibuster in Texas for abortion rights, for the right to kill children, basically, or fetuses, depending on your point of view. But she was hailed as a hero, and Ted Cruz does it. And of course, he's completely vilified, and he's vilified because they fear him. They fear not only him, they fear the action. So, of course, they had to drag him through the mud as much as possible. Why do they fear what Ted Cruz did, and why do I admire what Ted Cruz did? There's some people are saying even tactically it doesn't make sense because he's kind of filibustering against a law which we're going to use to stop Obamacare, whatever. Those are the kind of political niceties and little, turns of phrases and little, this is the kind of small baseball thinking that got us into this trouble. This idea, well, maybe tactically this doesn't look good, has a bad appearance. We lost the last 2 elections, Barack Obama's president twice, because conservatives didn't come out to vote. They didn't see a conservative in John McCain, and they didn't see one in Mitt Romney. If conservatives had shown up, we would have won handily by millions of votes, but we didn't. I understand why we didn't. I think it was a mistake, but I understand why we didn't. So the question is, why is Ted Cruz doing this filibuster? People say he's just doing it to appease the Tea Party. He's not doing it to appease anyone. He's doing it because he has principles instead of agendas, and his principles are important to him. Now, if this, as an ancillary, gets him support among the base, what do you know? Isn't that how it's supposed to work? Shore up your base, then move to the middle once you've got your bona fides. your street cred. This is street cred for Ted Cruz, and he's going to get and he's going to be doing more between now and then. I got a good, strong feeling about that. Ted Cruz is a courageous man. Ted Cruz has the courage to stand up and say what's true. And I've had a pleasure to work with him a little bit. He heard me do a couple of segments on renaming the Tea Party as the Rebel Alliance, and I heard he used that in his filibuster, and I'm very, very happy about that. And he's asked me to work with him a little more closely in the future, and it's one of the things I'd like to do. Look, I know you're going to be hearing a lot about this in the next couple, 3-4 weeks or a month or two, so just forgive me, but it's important. One of the reasons we're doing this subscription site is my life is good. I've got a nice apartment, got a nice car. I'm actually pretty happy. But one of the reasons we're trying to do the subscription site is because with additional revenues, we can do things like run conservative messaging boot camps, not just for Ted Cruz. He's superb. But this allows us to bring in anybody who's a conservative and get them in front of a green screen and show them how to dress and show them how to speak, how to read a teleprompter, and get them on message. Go out there and not only affect candidates, but affect people who are writing laws right now. So we really need the resources to be able to do this. And when we get that website open, we're gonna ask you for the resources to do it, because there's important work to be done out there that's way beyond me sitting in front of a green screen doing my afterburners or firewalls. We have a chance to really move the needle in a lot of ways, and that's one of the ways we want to do it. Ted Cruz has got a lot of guts, and he's got a lot of smarts. And anytime you see one man standing alone, you admire them. I would admire somebody loathsome politically who went up there and did that, because I'd say, well, this guy or woman believes in what he believes in. I disagree with it 100%, but I admire him for having the commitment. And I think everybody's built that way. I think everybody admires the one person who walks into the arena alone, one gladiator facing, 200 lions or 200 other gladiators, that one guy. People admire that. And I admire it. And even if he'd been wrong, I would have admired it. But he wasn't wrong. So, yeah, go Ted. Fortunately, we got some time to get everything kind of geared up and lock things, lock them kind of into place. And I feel really good about it. I really do. I think he's going to be terrific, and I think we're going to see a lot of him in the future. So, anyway, that's what I think about Ted. Moving on. Sally Moore says, woot. Anybody says woot's okay with me. I got my first ever gun permit today. Congratulations, Sally. Welcome to the world of citizenship. Shooting range and classes, here I come. Also a good idea. Welcome to the world of staying out of prison and the hospital. I've also been involved in one big Restore America event on 9/11 and a smaller overpass event this Saturday. Thanks for the inspiration, Mr. Whittle. By the way, where do I send money? I haven't heard from BillWhittle.com, but I got a confirmation email. I wish I'd read that question before I just did my previous rant. Yes, we're going to be opening BillWhittle.com a week from Saturday. The Stratosphere Lounge folks will get it next week. You'll get a look at it next Wednesday. I had to push things back a week because we wanted to be completely ready, not almost ready. But the website launch is, it's the 12th. We're going to have a Stratosphere Lounge on Wednesday the 9th, and that will be a chance for you fine people to go ahead and beta test this thing, and then you'll get a look at it first, and I think the Stratosphere Strata Loungers are going to get everything first. So that's the answer. Sally, the main reason I took your question, of course, is congratulations on the gun and the permit and the training, and you're going to have a blast, and it's a really important thing. I hadn't realized how important it was forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and now I think it's the most important thing. And if you're anything like me, Sally, you're going to find you're going to feel different about yourself. You're not going to feel different so much in terms of like, gosh, I've got a gun, I can protect myself now. Although that will cross your mind. I think you're going to feel, if you feel anything like I do, you might feel like you're carrying part of a burden that you didn't carry before, and it's a grand feeling. It really is. It's a sense of being outside pulling the wagon rather than taking a free ride in it. And I know that's a profound thing to say because it never occurred to me for the longest time. But once I had my own firearms, I realized these are not just to defend me; they're to defend my neighbors. They're to defend my family. They're to defend my block. Everything. Hey, there's Sally Morris right there in the comment section. Congratulations, Sally. Good for you. So anyway, take the lessons, go to the range, have a blast. It's just full on fun. I think if you're anything like me also, and like most everybody else who's congratulating you here is watching the show, you're going to be absolutely amazed at the state of things on a shooting range. You're going to be probably a little shocked, maybe even a little bit put off by how seriously they take the safety. How seriously safety is taken, and what happens if you happen to approach, over the yellow line while somebody's downrange. You'll get your ears pinned back, and you should. I've never felt better than I did, felt safer than I do on a shooting range or at the airport. Speaking of airports, I was at Santa Monica Airport when that plane hit the hangar the other night. I was in a play, and I came out, and the place just smelled like burning, and there were 15 or 20 cars down there, and if that plane had gotten out, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes earlier, I would have seen it with my own eyes. But I was at Santa Monica Airport the night that citation went in, and, we thought, when I saw where the wreck was, when I saw where the fire trucks were, I thought there was a pretty good chance that those guys might have gotten out of there because it was so far down the runway that the plane couldn't have been going very fast, but apparently he blew a tire and went into a hangar, and then the hangar collapsed down around him. So that's as close as I've been to an airplane crash. And the reason I bring it up is because airplane crashes don't affect my love of flying. They make me careful, and hopefully we learn something from them. But this is what I was saying earlier. Conservatives have principles and liberals have agendas. I believe, I don't just believe, I know. And if the person nearest to me in my world was killed by a handgun, it wouldn't change my opinion on gun ownership. It would change my opinion about the person that committed that murder. I'm not one of those people that I believe in things. These things that I believe in are the source of my philosophy, and they're an anchor and a rock that keeps you sane in this world. So if I'm outside and I'm flying an airplane and I see a plane crash, it doesn't make me want to stop flying. It makes me want to not crash. If I see somebody I care about deeply murdered by a handgun, I've been an advocate for gun rights, and somebody gets killed who I care about, or me, if it's me, it doesn't do any good because I don't get to go on CNN. But if somebody closest to me is killed by a handgun, it doesn't change my opinion about handgun rights. It changes my opinion about putting criminals in jail. Doesn't even change that, actually. So there you go. That's how it works. It's really liberating, and it's really make you a lot happier when you have principles instead of agendas. Because when you have agendas, everything changes, and your agendas change. Next thing you know, that agenda may be coming for you. Maybe something you want to think about next time, big old progressives. That power that you're giving to people to advance your agenda will be there after your agenda is gone. Anyway, moving on, Andy Schnick wants to ask, any thoughts on Tom Clancy's passing? Yeah, I wasn't a gigantic Clancy fan because I didn't have a whole lot of time really to read most of his stuff, but I did read Red Storm Rising and I read Hunt for Red October, and I thought they were terrific. And the thing about Clancy was Clancy knew how to make the military entertaining, and the thing about that is people have been trying to make the military entertaining for years. And you get movies like Top Gun and all this other stuff. Permission to buzz the tower. Denied, Maverick. Traffic in the pattern. I'm going to buzz it anyway. Woohoo. Spilled my coffee. Maverick. One of these days, if you weren't the best pilot in the fleet, I'd have you grounded. Yeah, whatever. You know, if Maverick had really done that, or if an Air Force pilot had done that, his jet would have pulled up after he buzzed the tower without permission, with traffic in the pattern, and he would have been met by a couple of MPs with M16s, and they'd point them at the pilot and tell him to get on the ground, and he'd be locked up, and you never hear from him again. Rightfully so, because that's what the military is. They're not a bunch of, reckless, D-bags running around. Oh, yes, sir, General, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. If you weren't the best fighter pilot in the Navy, it just doesn't work that way. The brilliance of Clancy was Clancy knew enough about the actual real military so that he could see the drama in what these people do legitimately. And like every other author, you should write about what you know. And if you write about something you don't know, and people who also don't know, you can probably convince them. But there's not a person here who's seen a movie at one point or another where the lead character is either a doctor, a lawyer, or he's a fighter pilot, he's a soldier, he's a this, he's that, he's whatever. And you're one of those people, pharmacist, let's say. Here's a movie about a pharmacist, and the guy who wrote the script isn't a pharmacist, but you are a pharmacist. you know that the guy who wrote that script is not a pharmacist, because pharmacists don't talk that way. And so the genius of Clancy was Clancy had so much actual real-world information on the military that he was able to make it entertaining without making it unbelievable. And we're going to miss him. He was a great patriot, I think. Every time I saw Clancy, he'd have a different hat on. I think he had a hat on from every single ship in the Navy. And somebody just pointed out Rainbow Six and all that stuff, too. It's tremendous, all that work on the Clancy's games have affected millions of Americans in a patriotic way. When you started playing Rainbow Six, I started playing Rainbow Six when Rainbow Six came out. It was a while ago now. And it's like, this is what the good guys do. And it's really kind of fun. So we're going to miss him. He's one of a kind. There are other people who write, kind of military action stuff, and there are other people who are very good at it. But Clancy really was the Rush Limbaugh of that genre. There are people who do what they're good at, and then there are the people who are best at what they do. And Rush is untouched, and Clancy was too. So we're definitely going to miss him. Moving on, Ian, or Ian, but I think it's Ian. It's that British spelling of Ian. McLaren says, is libertarianism the only way to beat the Democrats? Might be. I think you've got a two-part issue here. Let's start with the simple part, which is the important part. The Democrats and the media and the pop culture, which are all part of the same progressive mechanism, they own all of it, have basically made the word conservative and Republican so repugnant to people that even if you ask people, choose a policy position A or B, A. Choose this position A or B, A. And they go all the way down the list, choose A, every time. And then you point out to them that A is the conservative response. They still won't vote for Republicans or conservatives because we're the villains. And we've been portrayed as the villain, so people don't vote for villains. So one of the reasons why libertarianism is a way to beat the Democrats is because it's a new word. It hasn't had a chance to be completely tarnished yet. It will, as it gets to be more powerful, as the word libertarian starts to cause more damage to the giant progressive socialist collectivist machine, then they'll start throwing some mud on libertarians. Right now, they kind of like libertarians because some of them have libertarian leanings their own, namely, they want to do all the dope and watch all the pornography they can. Which I'm becoming quite in favor of. I really don't care. I think this is the relabeling is nice, and libertarian has that same sort of ring as liberal. These liberals aren't liberal. They're statists. They're masses. They're rulers and masses. This liberalism that we're seeing now is not liberal or progressive. It's old. It's ancient. It's let the smart people or the connected people rule everybody else. It's all we've ever known. The only liberal idea in human history is the idea of individual rights, individual responsibilities, private property. That's the only liberal idea there is. So we're actually the liberals. They're not even conservatives. They're control freaks. So libertarian is a rebrand, and that helps. And the second thing, too, is that I think most people, especially younger people, generally just want to be left alone. And we get really tarnished on, really get shellacked, really, on the two social issues, right, on abortion and gay marriage. And we understand what the consequences of these two things let loose can be. We understand that the institution of traditional marriage is the glue that holds civilization together, and we understand that the same thing is essentially true for gay rights. That was gay rights, and the same thing is true for abortion and this whole idea of the cheapening of human life and so on and so on and so on. And so these are core values for conservatives, and they're important values to fight. And I'm not saying you abandon them for political gain under any circumstances. But I think one thing we can say is, if in essence what we believe is that we should be left alone, is that everybody should be left alone, now you have a situation where you have a direct conflict between two core values on the part of conservatives: the right to be left alone, and then the unwillingness to abide by what we see as not only sin, but murder. And so then you get into issues of natural law, and you get into issues of all sorts of things. And I think really ultimately what I'm coming to is, what do we have to agree on together? we do have to live with people, and we have to make compromises if we're all going to be roomies. And it doesn't mean we have to give up fighting for what we believe in, but what can we accept as a minimum? And for me, the essence of the damage that is done to people's lives is giving the government power to control what you think. So being left alone from the government is the core value. And one of the reasons we have an argument about gay marriage in the first place is because the government is in the marriage business. Most conservatives are opposed to gay marriage, not so much because they oppose what two people do. They oppose the fact that it's a violation of their tradition, and it is. But they especially oppose the fact that the idea that if gay marriage is made legal and is given legal government sanction, then they'll be forced to marry people in their churches, and that's a governmental institution. It's a direct violation of the First Right. I meant to say governmental intrusion. Direct violation of the First Amendment, and so on and so on and so on. So if you get the government out of the marriage business, it really becomes who cares? They get married in some church in San Francisco. It's none of your business, But they don't have the right to force you to marry people of the same sex in your church because you find that contrary to your religion. That's what the First Amendment does. People have got this so backwards these days. These progressives say that the First Amendment is there to keep the church out of the government. It's not. That's nonsense. The First Amendment is there to keep the government out of the church. So, yes, I think libertarianism is a very powerful weapon against progressivism. And, if we have to abandon conservative and liberal and go with progressive and libertarian, now we have that word on our side again, the power of the language. Liberal, liberty, Now it's liberal, libertarians, even better match. Liberty, libertarian, I believe in liberty. If you can just get the people, by the way, if the libertarian movement, in cooperation with the conservatives, if the conservatives and libertarians can accept the fact that our Venn diagrams overlap over 95% of the total issues in the country, right? 95% overlap. If we can just accept that and shake hands and move as one group of people who are opposed to statism, we'd destroy these people, because then we'd be talking about liberty. And if the fight is about being left alone and being able to do what you want to do, these progressive swine aren't going to get 20% of the vote. And that's what we have to do. Because I fear the government. I fear that more than anything. And I don't fear this government. It's not like I fear Obama or I fear Harry Reid. It's not. I fear having other people having power over my life. That's what this whole thing's about, is not having other people have power over your lives. So, there you go. Anyway, that's it. I had a couple of other ones here that are just a little less political. Brent D. Cates says, Churchill is the key. As the skies darken, the inner light of individual hope and refined awesomeness will shine just like the Blitz. I put that in there just to say thank you. Anytime I hear Churchill's name and I think about the odds that he faced and the consequences of his actions, I think he's the greatest statesman who ever lived. And bar none. He's the living example, recently deceased example, of what conviction and courage can do to change history. Never, ever, 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 ever give up. Ever, ever. If you're going through hell, keep going. Another one that I heard just very recently, somebody gave me a couple of his quotations on nice little plates, and they're on my countertop in my house. Another Churchill quotation I like very much is, accept success like a gentleman and adversity like a man. He had it down. And I've said before, if I could have dinner with three people in history, any three people in history, if I could have 2-hour dinner with any three people in history, my choices would be Mark Twain, Winston Churchill, and then Mark Twain again. But yeah, a remarkable man. So anytime I see Churchill, it gets in the show. Jackson Gillian wants to know. Jackson Gillian, I guess. Maybe it's Gillian. I have a friend named Gillian. Hard to tell on these things. What do you do when you have a free weekend? I'm sorry, no. I want to know more about your nerdy LED accent lighting. In the back of the room there, I've got this. I built this cove of lights. That's the term I used back in the planetarium. You can see it there. So up against the ceiling, I've got strings of LED lights. And I forget who makes them, but they come in strips. You can get them at Fry's. And they plug into an AC outlet. And then there's a sensor. And when you hit the button on the sensor, you can change the colors to just about anything you want to. You can program different colors. Hard to see them on the screen because the camera's constantly correcting for them, but there's hundreds of different colors. And it changes my facial color too, so let's go back to the blue, I guess is what we had. And I've got the same thing controlling those picture frames around there too with a different controller. So let's white balance again here, see if this makes us a little less Oompa Loompa-ish. What's the matter with you? What did I have back there before? Was it red? Yeah, I think that's it. So the camera, by the way, nothing make me happier than if I could just manually control this camera, but the camera's constantly adjusting color and light and background. If I could just set these things manually, I wouldn't have such troubles. But anyway, Jackson, it's really, really cool. It was real easy to put up, too. I just tacked some, I guess they were 1x2 strips against the wall into the studs. Then I put this, they come on a long strip, about a foot long. You can just link them together, and they've got adhesive taping on the back, so they're real easy to put up. And then I put some floor siding up against them to make that cove so that I couldn't see the LEDs. You look around the room, you can't see the LEDs. All you can see is the wash of color on the walls, and I really love them. And they're really, really cool, and they're really nerdy, and they're awesome. So moving on here, what are we looking at? We're about 10 after, about an hour 10 so far. Isaac Keeman says, what do you do when you have a free weekend? Isaac, I don't know. I haven't had a free weekend in forever. I may have a free weekend coming up next weekend when we launch the website. So I'll let you know how it goes. Donald E. Hutchinson says, my theory as to why the president can't negotiate is because he has only child syndrome. It's not that he doesn't want, it's because he lacks the ability. What do you think? I think anybody who's got some answers into the psychology of this lunatic is a valuable person to have around. It makes perfect sense to me. I know everything that we used to do as kids was bargaining and trading, and he's an only child. And I think if there's anything to this only child syndrome, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know anything about it. But the fact that I don't know anything about it doesn't mean you won't get a full 10 minutes of my opinion on it. The fact is, I don't know much about it, but I can pretty much intuit a fair amount of it. As a kid with 2 brothers and a sister, you have to do some horse trading, and it's not all about you all the time. And there are other parties that have to be met, and sometimes mommy doesn't have time for you because one of the other sibs has some things that have to be taken care of. And so you learn that it's not about you. So I think that the fact that he's an only child has a big influence on Obama, but he's not just an only child. Obama is an only prince. He's a kid who's been told his entire life that he's, special and unique and perfect and wonderful. And I think even more so than kids who are raised in Santa Monica today, honestly. I think he's a really exceptional case. Of all the things I know about this guy psychologically, I think the thing that's most interesting to me is one of the most trivial things, really. Oftentimes it's the little tiny things that tell you the most. He wrote his name in concrete when he was 7 or 8 or 9 on a little patch of wet concrete. And he didn't write Barry, Sotero, or any of that stuff. Apparently he wrote King Obama. Now some people say maybe that's not true. I don't know. I wasn't there. It's got the ring of truth to it. There's no question that he had enormously, very kind of grandeur-esque, narcissistic visions of himself from a very, very early age. No one's ever told him no. No one's ever told him he's wrong. No one's ever told him he's not good enough. Doors open from across the street as he walks across the street. He's been given everything. It's no wonder he acts the way he does. He's a child. He's a man-child. It's really not fair to man-children. He's just a child, and you can tell. You can tell his petulance when he's crossed. This rage that people would disagree with him. He can't accept the fact that people might disagree with his policies and not disagree with him personally. A lot of his followers are very narcissistic that way. He's a little baby. And he's never had hardship. Barack Obama's never had to lose 10 Little League baseball games in a season of 10. I have. Doesn't make me Superman, makes me human. Barack Obama's never had that experience of getting out there week after week after week and losing. And then next year we went out there and we won every game. That's because they moved me to first base from right field. There's no question. I don't want to take credit because it's unseemly. But, really it's what it comes down to. He's never had any of these experiences. I think this only child syndrome thing makes a lot of sense. You couple it with the malignant narcissist diagnosis and all the rest of it, and you've got yourself a recipe for real trouble. Zachariah Tiemans, who we've been getting a lot of questions from. Some of these are really good. I've got 2 questions from him here. First question, would you go skydiving? Not voluntarily. Second question is a 2-part question. What grinds your gears? Oh, I'm Peter Griffin now. And what is the most irritating usage of the English language? It's so often your first response is the truest response. What grinds my gears is Americans don't know how to drive. And it's just one simple thing, really. It's not that they're terribly bad drivers in any other capacity. It's just one thing that most American drivers don't understand. And frankly, if it were up to me, I would take a 10-year hiatus and I'd pull In God We Trust off of our money. And in exchange for In God We Trust, when we put the national motto right there, I would take off E Pluribus Unum, I would take off In God We Trust, and on every single coin we have, I would put slower traffic, keep right. That's what I would do. If I was dictator of America, I would basically command our armed forces to go over to Germany, and I would requisition 10 million Germans and have them come to America and teach us how to drive. Slower traffic, keep right. I spend more of my life on freeways than anybody has a right to. There's not a day that goes by where I don't look at the situation of why everybody is crawling along at 26 miles an hour and look downstream at the traffic and say it's because these idiots out here don't know that the left lane is not just another lane. It's supposed to be a passing lane. If you're being passed on your right, you are in error and you should be killed. Unless you've got a perfectly good excuse. I think I should be able to drive through the city with my Camaro and have a couple of mod deuces, a couple of 50 cals located where the fog lights are. Those fog lights should just roll out of position, and I get behind somebody and I give them a little warning. I say, slower traffic, keep right. I'll have a little microphone. If they don't move over, just open up on them. It is... why is it so hard? And I'll see it on the turnpike in Florida, where a 2-lane turnpike for 6 miles. The Florida Turnpike is like being on an airplane runway. It's a straight line to the horizon, then it cranks 20 degrees to the right, and it's another straight flat line to the horizon. It cranks 20 degrees left, another straight flat line to the horizon, and it's 2 lanes wide, and there will be 2 cars going at exactly the same speed, and one of them is wrong, and it's the guy on the left. That guy needs to move. And it's like, you pass the car, you move over. And then you stay in the right lane until you have to pass another car, and then you move over. And then you stay in that lane again until you have to pass another car, and then you move over. It's just stay to the right. How hard is it? Makes me crazy. Sometimes it makes me genuinely crazy. There are times when it just really, really makes me nuts. It's like, get out of this lane. You can go as slow as you want to over on the right. I don't know if the 50 cals would do it, actually. I think maybe we'd need to have hellfires or something like that. And Guatemalan Water Snake in the comments section says, for Bill and his fancy car, all traffic is slower traffic. Yes, I have a fancy car now, but for 10 years I drove a 2000 Ford Escort, and that 2000 Ford Escort knew slower traffic, keep right. And just that simple. So that's what grinds my gears, Zacharias. And as far as irritating use of the English language, I don't know. I do know. This is what drives me nuts about the English language, is when people are trying to quote people, they say, so she goes, so he goes, so they go, so he goes, so I goes, so what are your girlfriends? Well, she goes, I goes, what? No, why don't you just say said? She said, I said, you said, we said, so I go, so she goes, so they go, so we go, so I go. Look, I may find myself doing that. If somebody finds out, if somebody finds me saying goes, please call me out on it, and I'll just whack myself in the back of the head with a baseball bat. I can't stand that. So she goes, so she went, so I said, you said, he said, she said. It's not goes. Goes means walks away. Said means spoke. Somebody's going to pay for this. Somebody's going down. Okay, we are 15 minutes left or so. Shannon Smith says, Bill, what is your view on green issues? By that I mean genetically modified foods, organics versus conventional foods, factory farm meat, vaccines. Do you think it's possible that it's an area where conservatives blindly follow what the government says is best? EPA, CDC, FDA guidelines. When in every other area we are more independent in our thinking. is that we have a knee-jerk reaction to environmental wackos, and this means we must be insane for it. And we think it must be insane if they're for it. Sorry, just curious. It's a great question, Shannon, and I've had some thoughts about this lately that are pretty new. First of all, let me just go to the larger green issue, okay? I am in favor of protecting our environment against pollution. And by pollution, I mean things like mercury being dumped into the rivers or sewage being dumped into rivers. I'm against that kind of pollution. But I'm not against the emission of carbon dioxide, which is at dangerously low levels in our environment. And I'm not against things like, putting in a plant someplace because there might be a species of beetle that lives there. I'm sorry, I'm not too worried about that. So I'm green to the degree of rationality. I'll give you a couple other things that I'm rationally green on. Do I care about recycling? Not so much, because to be honest with you, most recycling takes more energy than producing new stuff. So you're actually hurting the environment when you recycle most stuff. I think aluminum is an example. Penn and Teller had a fantastic thing on this thing, really. Most stuff goes into landfills. Landfills! Yeah, landfills. What's the problem? You go out, you dig a big hole in the ground. Nowadays, you line it with plastic and all kinds of other things and clays and all this other stuff. Dig a big hole in the ground. You push the stuff in there. You cover it up. You put grass over the top. It's an improvement over what the land was before. We don't have enough room for landfills. Listen, folks, if you've ever flown anywhere over this country, if you've ever flown from Los Angeles to New York, you know that there is more. It's just astonishingly how big this planet is. It is so bloody big. You could basically take all of the waste that the country makes for the next 20 years or something in a mile by mile by mile cube and just pour it in there and fill it up. Why not give future archaeologists something cool to find? Honestly, I don't get what the problem is here. I do not like garbage dumps in my neighborhood, but that doesn't happen. That hasn't happened in 50 years in this country, or 30 anyway. So I don't have any problem with landfills. I don't particularly much care about recycling. Now, some things I do care about. For instance, there are large amounts of plastics and other foreign objects that are floating in the ocean. I've heard reports that there's like a Sargasso Sea of floating debris in the ocean that's the size of a continent or the state or something. It's gigantic, size of Texas. That's got to be cleaned up. We should be out there cleaning that up. That's not appropriate. It's costing us wildlife, and it's just, I don't want oceans filled with floating plastic bags. So to the degree that stuff is not going into a well-managed landfill, but is going out to sea, stop that. That seems reasonable to me. Keeping metals and toxics out of the environment is reasonable. Keeping carbon dioxide out of the environment is not reasonable. To me, I can make a case for this. If somebody's got some evidence that's overwhelming, I will change my mind. So as far as green goes, wasting stuff is stupid. Wasting is just stupid. It's stupid to waste stuff. If I had solar cells on my roof or a solar water heater that saved me money, that's smart. But being told I must have a solar plant that then has to be backed up by a conventional plant with 85% of the capacity and is not as efficient as a larger plant would have been, that's stupid. That's just moralizing. So that's my attitude on green in general. I'm against waste. I like efficiency, but I don't like enforced efficiency. If I want to drive a car that takes 6 gallons to go a mile, should be my right to do it. I'm paying the same rate in gas as everybody else is. So, yeah, it's pretty straightforward as far as that goes. Now, as far as the food thing goes, I've kind of been brought around to this by that no good lowlife Lad Loudon, who's really big on food issues and pointed out some things to me, and I've actually been eating a little better as a result of it. And so there's a bunch of stuff out there that are some issues. First of all, there's the moral issue. I like to think that I have been known to have the occasional steak and cheeseburger. When I say occasional, I mean weekly. But I like to think that those animals would live something that looks like a reasonable life out in the fields. I don't like the idea that they're grown in boxes, and I got a problem with that. I don't think it's necessarily, in fact, not only not necessary, I don't think it's great to be feeding hormones to rows of chickens that never get out of the light of day, that kind of stuff. I have ethical problems with that. And then genetic foods. Look, here's my opinion on genetic foods. Guys like, I think I saw his name in the comment section, guys like Norman Borlaug have fed the world. When you think about what he's done by changing the naturals, there's very, very few. By the way, just about anything, I'll go further. Every single grain out there is genetically modified. Now, it may be genetically modified by crossbreeding, but nobody's eating the natural grasses that were on Earth 10,000 years ago. Even wheat has been refined through breeding and botany and so on. So when you say genetically modified, nothing's really in its natural state, but I guess you're talking about, going in there with the seeds and doing it Monsanto's way. I think what you can say about that is, look, as long as you have an understanding of it, I think you should be allowed to. I don't particularly find them dangerous. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think they are. I do know that if given a choice between starving to death or eating genetically modified wheat, I'd take the wheat, and liberal activists are denying people all around the world that choice. That's just madness. No, you starve to death than you have this genetically modified corn. What? So look, by and large, I think the stuff is very, very good. I start to get in a little bit of problems when you find out things that I've heard stories to the effect of somebody produces a genetically modified grain, a corn, let's say, a type of strain of corn, and then the strain gets out into the general population, so to speak, so that this particular modifier is now out there. It's either spread through pollen or it's just, whatever. And then they start coming after people who never bought that stuff and saying, we got a DNA marker on it. We own part of this. It's like, yeah, it gets a little dicey for me, So for me, I think it really just comes down to two fundamental guidelines of my life. What is freedom? What is the most free position, and what's the most common sense position? So frankly, as long as there's a label on it that says this is genetically modified corn, okay. Or even the other way around is fine. If you say it's organic, swell. If you want to buy organic, buy organic. I'm starting to buy more organic because I think there might be something to it. But that's a choice. See, this is when we get down to the brass tacks here. That's a choice that I'm making for myself. I'm not enforcing my choice on anybody else. I'm not making you buy organic. I'm not saying you can't buy organic. I'm not saying everything that's mandatory, it's not mandatory, is forbidden. I'm just saying if you want to have a choice to buy that and it costs more money, spend your money accordingly. There you go. Freedom, common sense, solve all your problems for you. We got 4 to go, short ones, I think. Dave Olson says, last question. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, Dave. Dave's always kicking out great questions. If you weren't following the news, would you have noticed the government shutdown affecting your life? Actually, no. I wouldn't. And that's what they fear. You remember the sequester? You may remember the sequester. A few months ago, airplanes were being prevented from landing at airports because of the sequester. Anyway, the thing is, no. And what really is really hurting us is the fact that they're hurting us. That's what this administration is doing and what the entire government is doing. They know they're being threatened now. They're being threatened with actual real cuts, and the idea that they can't spend forever is really disturbing to them. I said earlier I said earlier that it is an addict. The government is and Obama are addicts, and now the addicts know that somebody's on to their spending, and so basically what they're doing is we've cut up their credit cards, and so they've said, well, if you're going to cut up our credit cards, then we're going to smash all your China. And that's what they're doing. They're smashing the China when they're blocking people from going things like the Lincoln Memorial, which is a wide open structure. When they're blocking people from getting into those things, then and the World War II Memorial, you're putting up barricades to prevent people from walking in open air space, then it's pretty clear what's happening is the government is saying to the American people, you will take a knee to us. You will take a knee to us because we will make things so painful for you that you won't threaten our iron rice bowl anymore. And that's what they're doing. They're making it painful. They're not cutting the assistant deputy undersecretary to the chairman of the redevelopment board. They are cutting essential services to make us pay so that we'll bend our knee. So, there you go. And of all the things I see this administration do, these are the things that make me the angriest.
they punish the American people for disagreeing with them. They punish them. They go out of their way to punish them. They're trying to. I heard they were trying to close like Mount Vernon, which is privately owned. No one's going to have any more vacations as long as you shut down the government. See, that's what they really have to do. It's not just what they're trying to do, it's what they have to do. They have to convince the American people that if the government shuts down, the world's going to end. And if the world doesn't end and the government is shut down, then they're finished. So they'll keep turning up the pain. We'll start seeing some air traffic delays soon. We'll start hearing threats about, oh, we almost had a plane crash because we didn't have enough controllers on strike. They're gonna trot everything out. They'll start talking about, well, it looks like we're not going to be able to put any ammunition in those rifles that we're going to send into combat in Syria. And geez, it's a real shame that we had to scuttle those carrier groups, but we can't fuel them and stuff. So what they're really going to try and do is they're going to try and make you think that that if the government shuts down, the world's going to end. And so far it hasn't, and this terrifies them enormously, because if it turns out that the American people don't really notice a government shutdown, then, Lucy, you've got some splaining to do. So there. Brent D. Cates says, we need a Stratolounge identifier, something people could wear every day like a ring or a watch. How about a t-shirt or a hat or a hoodie or something? Brent, when we open up the merchandise store in 10 days or so, we're going to have 3 different product lines. We'll have a BillWhittle.com product line with those logos and colors. We'll have a Virtual Presidency product line with those logos and colors, and we'll have a Stratosphere Lounge product line with those logos and colors. And so you will be able to wear a hat. No, I don't know. I'm not sure we have hats in the first round. Again, my temptation is to put everything in the box at once, and I just can't do it. But we will have bumper stickers, and we'll have T-shirts, and we'll have fleeces, depending on your level of membership, what you buy when you come in. If you come in, we'd love to have you. But yeah, it's about time we started branding some of this stuff, started having some fun. So we have the new logo, which you probably saw. I'll show you again, which I think is just really cool and very classy and kind of neat. And so we've got that stuff, and more coming. So that's that. 2 more to go. Louisa Anderson says, as a business owner, if I choose not to serve a customer whose demands contradict my convictions, am I discriminating? When is discrimination okay? Define discrimination. I wouldn't call that discrimination. I call it prejudice. Discrimination is something that every rational person does every single day of their lives. You go out to McDonald's and you decide you want to have the chicken sandwich over the Big Mac. You are discriminating. You're making a discrimination. If you buy if you are able to say that a Mercedes is a better car than a Yugo, that's discriminatory. Everything in life is discriminatory. You are making discriminations. You're making value judgments. You are separating objects according to quality. That's what discrimination is. And you're nuts if you don't discriminate. So that's one of those words that was applied to people during the Civil Rights War on racism, which was a worthy war to fight. But once again, you don't get to violate the language with words like, I'm anti-discrimination. No, you're not. Come out and say what you really are. You're anti-racism. That's a much better expression, and it's clearer. The person who's anti-discrimination then goes out and discriminates 100 times that day. I'd rather have this cable package than that cable package. I'd rather buy this brand of soap than that brand of soap. This brand of soap is probably better, but it's a little more expensive. I don't think I can afford it. I'm going to go with a cheaper brand. That's discrimination. You discriminate every day. Everybody discriminates every day. So let's go to the bigger question. That's more of a definitional question. This is going to be controversial. But again, common sense and freedom, there be your lodestones. As a business owner, if I choose not to serve a customer whose demands contradict my convictions, am I discriminating? You are. The deeper question is, should you be allowed to? And my answer is, of course you should be allowed to. You should be allowed to, if you are a business owner, if you have gone to the trouble to set up a business in the world I live in, if you want to discriminate against somebody and say, I'm not going to allow anybody in this store who's wearing a blue shirt or the color blue at all, that should be your absolute right. And if you want to take it to its logical conclusion, you should be able to say, I don't want to serve black people, I don't want to serve white people, I don't want to serve Chinese people, I don't want to serve anybody under the age of 18, I don't want to serve anybody over this. If it is a private institution, you should be allowed to do that. The answer to a person who puts out a sign that says whites only in a restaurant is not to force him. It's his business, it's his property, he can do whatever he wants. The answer to a whites only restaurant is to just let it go out of business. Because if you don't, we have laws that protect the innocent, protect the guilty to protect the innocent. We do these things to protect the outliers so that the bulk of the freedoms stay intact. As long as you're protecting the outliers, the middle's safe. And so I think it is less dangerous to say, yeah, go ahead and have your racist restaurant. That's your business. You can discriminate against people with red hair. You can you may not allow. Maybe you just don't want to allow women in your store. Maybe you don't want to allow anybody like that in your store. I think you should have a right to do that. It's your store. It's private property. It's your business. You should have a right to do that. It's yours. You own it. I think you pay consequences for it, and I think in many cases you probably should pay consequences for it, because I think those policies are reprehensible. By the way, if they ever print that, they won't listen to the part where I say I think those policies are reprehensible. They'll just say I'm in favor of having restaurants that say no black people. I'm just saying, if somebody else has the ability to tell you what to do on your own private property, the sweat of your own labors and your own brow, that will never end ever. Won't end anywhere ever. The way to have desegregated the South was for people to have simply said, this is disgusting, we're not going to be a part of it anymore. And that's what was happening. Now, you can make the case that the courts had to step in and speed up the process, and I think that's probably a fairly solid case. I think you can make that case. But what are you left with? Are you left with respect? I'm not sure. I think you're left with resentment and even more antagonism. I think one of the most amazing things I ever read, and one of those things that I read a long time ago before I really got into politics, was a George Will quote. And he was talking about the movie Glory. And he said the answer to prejudice is excellence. They were talking about like the Black Conservative Caucus said, you got to give us this win. You've got to allow us to win this one. And I guess he was talking with Reagan or something back when I first read this. And George Will wrote in the back of Newsweek, he said, if you give somebody something, it's not a win. You don't respect people because you're forced to. You respect people because they do things that you come to grudgingly admire and make you realize that they are real people. And he was talking about the movie Glory in the 54th Massachusetts, I want to say, where you had an all-black regiment that was despised by Union soldiers, despised by them. Needless to say, the Confederates would have killed them to the man, and they often did. But the Union soldiers watched them go in to battle and thought these are subhuman monkeys. And then the 54th Massachusetts went in on Battery Wagner, and when the battle was over, they didn't think they were subhuman monkeys. They went in there and performed magnificently. And the people watching that had to confront who are you going to believe, your prejudices or your own lying eyes? Had to watch those men go in there and live and die like men. And when it was over, they were by and large treated differently because of the evidence of their excellence, the evidence of their courage, the evidence of their willingness to die for the same cause that white people were dying for. And that changed a lot of minds, and does change a lot of minds. So public structures, public buildings, those have the absolute right and the obligation to be utterly colorblind and non-restrictive in any way. But private property and private businesses are private businesses. And frankly, if you have a problem with me saying that a guy should be able to have a restaurant that says we don't serve blacks, if you have a real problem with that, then how do you justify Curves being able to say that we don't allow men inside? What's the difference? Really, what's the difference? Is it because one group's okay and the other group's not? If we had a male-only gym, there'd be protesters outside. How many Curves are there in the country? Hundreds? Hundreds, certainly. Maybe thousands. Nobody has a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. If women want to work out together, that makes sense to me. That's fine. But if you're able to say that, you don't get to support Curves and say, oh, it's reprehensible that we would allow somebody to be that prejudiced. We would take away a person's right to eat wherever they want to. I think if there's somebody who wants to have an all-black restaurant they can have an all-black restaurant. I think that person's really diseased, and I think they'll see some protesters outside. That's your right, too, by the way. You have a right to protest these kind of things. And, you know, I don't know. But I think the excellent argument is the argument, and all you have to do is look at Booker T. Washington, the Tuskegee Institute, and the Tuskegee Airmen, and see what happened when the black community leaders decided to go down the road of, no, we're not going to ask for lower standards. We're going to have to demand higher standards because we've got something to prove. When I think about the debate between Booker T. this not just the one debate, I mean the societal debate between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington arguing for excellence, Du Bois arguing for the talented 10th, the 10% elite who would get all these things and supposedly, you know, they would be given things by the Great White Father, and then they would pass them on down to the black community. I guess that was a theory. W.E.B. Du Bois has given us Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, and Booker T. Washington gave us the Tuskegee Airmen who never lost a bomber in World War II. That's just evidence, you know. That's not me wishing something was true or not true. It's just what happened. Final two questions here. Oh, they're separate. Oh, they're not. They're not separate. I remember why I put them together. Josh Tiemans says, hey, Bill, will America be forgotten in history? No. First of all, every nation is remembered in history. There, you know, as long as there is history, if you're saying forgotten in history, that assumes that there is going to be history. So if there's going to be history, needless to say, American won't be forgotten. That just goes without saying. We're the greatest force in the history of the world, and if they can remember the Roman Empire, which was nothing compared to us, we'll be remembered. There's no question about that. I think a much better question is, Josh, is will America be forgotten if there is no history anymore? What happens if we get to the point where we're just not even writing things down anymore? What happens if there's just some catastrophe? And I don't even think it's going to be a nuclear war or environmental catastrophe. I think the most likely thing to happen is that society just collapses under the weight of its own ignorance. And once the structures go down, you know, we're not going to find a lot of iron ore lying on the ground anymore. There's not going to be any more oil bubbling up through the ground like Texas tea if you just shoot a musket ball into it. If this civilization goes down far enough, it's going to be tough to come back. So will America be forgotten if there's no more history? And the answer there is no also. And the reason is that there's only one thing that there really is. Forget about even economic collapse. Let's just say we're talking about real history. We're not talking about centuries or thousands of years, which is human history is together is what, 7,000 years of written history? So 7,000 years of human history backwards. 7,000 years in the future, 10,000, 100,000, a million years in the future, 100 million years in the future, a billion years in the future. There'll still be America. And there won't be any other country. It'll all be gone. It'll all be overrun by vegetation and broken down by bacteria and subsumed under the Earth's crust and all that other stuff. All of the concrete will eventually crumble and be just swallowed up by vines and leaves and grass and everything. And every single thing that we've left on our Earth, including the pyramids, will eventually be covered up over the course of millions and billions of years. It will all go away. All of it. Every nation, every empire, every king, every ruler, all that stuff will go away. And when it does, up there on the moon, there will be 6 flags, which I understand today are being bleached white by the radiation, but it won't matter because you'll still be able to see where the stripes and the stars are sewn on them. And there will be 6 silver insects that have been crushed into the ground by the weight of their top stages going home. And there will be 6 places on the face of that moon and footprints by the thousands that will be there 1 billion years from now. Be a little softened over that time, be a little eroded by micrometeorite impacts. The footprints will be a little more shallow, they won't be as crisp, but there'll be footprints. The footprints will still be there. And the silver foil, the gold mylar foil will still be there. The aluminum of the landing pads will still be there. Flagpoles will still be there. Flags will still be there. 1 billion years from now when everything's gone. So, yes, because of Apollo, America's immortal. And that brings me to our last question for the night, which is from Michael Glanville, who says, any word on the Free Frontier? I'd like to donate ASAP. The Free Frontier, for those of you who may not know, is a plan I have for a private space program in the real world where you put $9.95 a month on your credit card or whatever you could afford, and that money would go directly into R&D for either existing companies or startup companies, and we wouldn't just spend money just to do it like the National Endowment of the Arts. We'd have a plan, and the plan would be a jet, and then a suborbital vehicle, and then an orbital vehicle, and then an orbital presence, and then a translunar presence, then a lunar landing, and then a vehicles that could travel throughout the solar system, be refueled, reused, and upgraded. That's the end of the line, as far as I can see. There may be world downstream where the Free Frontier is paying for warp drives and all that other stuff. Who knows? We need a large number of people to do it. I'm going to need about 3,000 subscribers for BillWhittle.com to make this thing a really going concern. But for Free Frontier, we're going to need no less than 100,000. We really need 1 million. We to do it really right, to do it as fast as you could do it. If you had 3 million Americans, if you had 10 million Americans at $10 a month, that's $100 million a month. It's $1.2 billion a year. With 10 million Americans in the Free Frontier, you could not build the hardware fast enough. Literally, you'd be accruing money in the bank because you literally couldn't build it quick enough. 10 million Americans in the Free Frontier, we'd be back on the moon in 4 years probably, and we'd never leave again. So the answer to your question is the Free Frontier is coming. I have to get this website up first. It is completely different than the BillWhittle.com subscription thing, but subscribers to BillWhittle.com will help us launch the Free Frontier because there's a lot of work has to be done for the Free Frontier. There's the 501c3, which has to be established. That's not so hard. I've done a few of those. But there's an awful lot of people that have to be met with. There's an awful lot of things that have to be in place. And there's an awful lot of marketing and things that have to happen to make that go the way it needs to go to reach that kind of base. And in the same way that BillWhittle.com subscribers can keep things like the movies in development by having a revenue base, this gives us the tools to do all of these things. Gives us tools to develop movies, develop them to the point where we go out and get private money for them so that we're not sucking up all the money on one movie. We're just developing 2 or 3 of them at a time. Gives us the means to go to Washington and do some of these schools for people, for politicians. And it gives us the means to develop the Free Frontier and go around and figure out what we have to do to get this thing to happen. I know some people involved who are in aerospace, Burt Rutan's one of them, and some other people as well, who are really on board and really get it, don't see anything wrong with it. But that kind of thing to get to 1 million members or 10 million members is a big machine. And I don't have the money to do that out of pocket, but with 3,000 subscribers, we could do it. We could get the groundwork laid, and then that would be a separate subscription. It'd be a separate site, be a non-political site. But we would have started it, and we probably would have started it here in the Stratosphere Lounge, which is probably a good way to end it, 1:45, I guess. You guys are the hardcore. You're the soldiers. The Stratosphere Lounge crew are the people who willing to put up with this every week. Just listen to me, flap my jaws for 90 minutes or so. There's an awful lot to do. We expect that as I said, expect to get the website. Is big official rollout's going to be on Saturday. Why can't I remember the date? I want to say it's the 12th. I think I have it in my mind. Yes, it's Saturday the 12th of October, but we will have a beta site up, I think, by this time next Wednesday. So we will open it up to you guys. And you can poke around, and the subscription stuff will be working. If you want to be subscribers, that's great. If you want to see for a while what we're doing and bide your time, that's great too. If you're already an existing member of Declaration Entertainment, you'll get an email, no one is going to have paid for a minute or a day of membership that they didn't get. So if you're a year-long member at Declaration Entertainment, we'll reimburse your difference, or we'll sign you up at the new site, whichever you choose. We'll send you a specific email, and we'll be sending out the Declaration Entertainment emails to people probably in beginning of next week, I think. So anyway, that's exciting, and a lot going on behind the scenes, but I've been talking about it too much. It's time to get back into the world of politics. So I hope this was as much fun for you as it was for me. Episode 40, that in itself is quite an achievement, really, when you think about it. And I got it. Like I said, my main problem right now is trying not to put every single possible egg in the basket. Let's just get the basket looking as good as we can, get it open, and then we can start talking about the things we want to add. We got a lot of shows we want to do. We got a lot of A lot of new merchandise. We got a lot of new product we want to bring in. We got a lot of stuff going on, and we got a lot of stuff in the can, folks. Like I said, the one thing I promised myself on this BillWaldo.com thing was going to be different than what we did with Declaration Entertainment, where we basically opened the doors to a store and said, we got nothing on the shelves here, help us build the thing that we're going to sell you. When we open BillWaldo.com, I fully expect that every single click, every single page is going to have brand new content, and we've got 2 or 3 updates for each one of them in the can ready to go. So we got a lot of stuff to go. Anyway, that's it for episode 40 of the Stratosphere Lounge. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess this is as appropriate time as any to go out on the fabulous logo that we've got for the new website, and you'll be able to see this on your coffee mugs and your T-shirts in the not too distant future. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.